Hello, thank you for joining today's LinkedIn Live Colorado LLP virtual meeting. I'd like to welcome everybody here. Today we have 3 LLPs that are joining us. We have Alexia Smith with Altitude Law Group. We have Jenny Wirtz with Modern Family Law and Tara Atkins with Burnham Law. So thank you for all of you joining us. This is a very, I think, relevant theme that we have today. Those who were in the first class to become LLPs are just now approaching the first year being an LLP. So a lot of these things that we're going to be talking about are really relevant. The first question we have is if each of you can share a brief overview of your journey to becoming an LLP, what motivated you to become an LLP, and what path did you take? We'll just go around. I'm just going to start with the way that people are on the screen. Alexia, if you would start.
Yeah, so I was kind of rather late to the LLP party. I wasn't part of the, I was sworn in with the inaugural class, but I didn't know that a lot of this was happening until right before the last day of registration for some of those classes. But I have been a paralegal had been a paralegal for 12 to 13 years. I was a child family investigator from 2013 to 2016. So my passion is really rooted in helping families with children and very focused on those kid issues, helping navigate this process and setting them up for the future. And I thought that, an LLP really helped give me that bridge to get there, to be able to help clients in a real way without having to go, through 3 years worth of law school plus all of the expense that's associated with that. And so it's just kind of that middle ground for me.
Okay. And Jenny, what about you?
Yeah, so I was just doing my paralegal thing for many, many years, and I found out about this new rule, Rule 207. And it sounds corny, but the second I found out about this rule and read the rule, I just felt like that's what I was supposed to do. I don't know how to explain it. I know I've always been an advocate for people. And I really loved the part about how we were giving access to justice to people who can't normally afford it. So I just knew I was supposed to do it.
Okay. And Tara, what about you?
I always wanted to practice law. I actually signed up for the LSAT about 5 to 6 years ago. And at that time, my husband and I were foster parents, had 2 little boys. Life got in the way. I've been a paralegal about 20 years, and being an LLP kind of got me to where I wanted to be, being able to practice law and work with clients. And as soon as I saw it, I ended up starting the application process, signing up for the classes, and started studying and making notebooks for it.
Okay. So I think it sounds like we all kind of were on the same page and why we became LLPs and are happy that we're doing it now. Have any of you encountered any resistance or misunderstandings about what an LLP role is? Either from colleagues or clients?
I haven't had a lot of misunderstandings, so to say. I try to be real, especially with clients. I'm really super clear. I even part of our engagement process is they sign an initial next to every on the Rule 207 so that they know exactly what my limitations are. With opposing counsels and stuff like that, I think that's been probably the bigger of people trying to, other attorneys trying to weaponize some parts of the rule or some of the vagueness there, and just being well, you're not an attorney, so you're not enough, right? So I don't need to talk to you. I'm not going to deal with you, sort of thing. And that's been, a couple times over some issues I've had there. But I'm just stay persistent and just kind of push past it. And I feel proving yourself as someone in their 30s and then someone who's been around the block for a while. With all of us, having to now recreate yourself or represent, everything, whereas you wouldn't have to do that if you were still just a paralegal, or even if you're a first year attorney. I don't feel like they would make us try as hard to show our knowledge as they are. I feel like they're making LLPs, at least in my experience.
Has anybody else experienced anything different?
I pretty much have experienced the same. I've had several opposing parties tell my clients that we're just paralegals and that we aren't able to practice law and that we're not going to be able to be helpful in their case. That has probably been the biggest issue. I ran into a couple of issues right after we got licensed. I covered a status conference a couple of days after, and the magistrates and judges just weren't sure what we were allowed to do and not do. And they were actually speaking to my client rather than me. But I think a lot of that's been cleared up now that it's almost been a year since we're practicing.
Mhm.
And so have you been at a status conference or some other appearance before the court where opposing counsel has made remarks like, well, you're just an LLP or something like that, where the court has like stepped in or and helped you out in any way?
Not really in court. It just comes out like after we serve somebody or once they find out that we're an LLP, it's usually going through the client mainly.
Okay.
You know, I've had sort of like a polarized experience with this because either the person on the other side, whether it's opposing counsel, client, whoever, either they really love the idea or they're like really skeptical of the idea. And I haven't found too many people in the middle. So I know for me, I love working at a place where they are very accepting and like embracing the idea. But what the ladies have said is completely correct. Like if we were first year attorneys, we would be treated like, okay, you're first year attorneys, you know, but as LLPs, I think it's just like, we're really going to put you through the test, which I kind of embrace and just say, okay, because I really want this. I really want to do this. So.
And then building up on that, what strategies have you used when working with clients to let them know what your role as an LLP is and how you're going to proceed in that manner?
I basically go through my limitations right at the start. We do something similar where we have an actual addendum to our fee agreement that lists out what we can and cannot do. I don't feel like people always read through the fee agreement. So my very initial call, I go through my limitations.
And do you find that you have to sometimes follow up with clients and as the case goes on and kind of remind them of things, or are they remembering what you can do?
I do feel like you have to end up reminding them. I have a case that is set for a permanent orders hearing the 1st of June. And I actually talked to her this morning and she thought I would be the one going with her. And we had discussed it several times that unless she wanted to actually examine the witnesses, that we would have an attorney from the firm step in.
Yeah, I think I have to remind clients a lot too of just what my role in making sure that we're always on the same page. But I also, you know, I mean, when I set a permanent orders hearing or any contested hearing, I put in I'll usually in my emails to notice there was a reminder, Angie Whitford will be the one attending with you at this hearing today. You know what I mean? To like constantly remind them every step of the way. And at all my I have a bunch of like checkpoints before a hearing that I do, and I include it in every single one of theirs. So I try to make sure it's really, really clear because I do think that that's helpful to clients understanding that. Because yeah, I do think they can sometimes forget, mostly when it comes to hearing. What's funny is I feel like a lot of people have a easy time remembering like, oh, if I want to talk about, you know, a bankruptcy, I need to go talk to an attorney. I'm like, yep, you sure do. They have no problem remembering like, oh, that's not something you can handle or talk to me about. But sometimes like the hearing and then I don't know if it's because like they've seen me at status conferences and I make arguments to the court and it's fine, but they're just like, wait, I'm not sure why this is different then. And I think that's the biggest thing is trying to figure out a way to explain to them the differences between like what cross-examination and examination of a witness is versus like arguments to the court.
And Jenny, what about you?
Yeah, sorry. I agree with what the ladies both said. When I first talk to a client, I'm not only explaining my limitations, but I'm assessing their situation to see, is this likely to be beyond my scope? Will an attorney be involved or need to be involved? And if I think that's true, I'll definitely remind them of that. And I'll remind them of, but I also think, yeah, they don't remember that when you're kind of going through the case. So I just keep the rule with me constantly. And, even if other people don't understand the rule, as long as we do, then like that's the main thing. So we're not stepping outside our scope.
And so I think we all work to keep the clients informed and to let them know exactly what our roles are. But what are some of the other, or what is one of the other biggest challenges that you have met, and how did you overcome it as an LLP?
I will say for me, the biggest challenge is when you do say, do you know what an LLP is? And you're explaining it to the client. If you're met with like doubt and skepticism, you have to remain confident. You can't let that be contagious. You can't be like, oh, well, they don't think I can do it, so I probably can't do it. That test was really hard. You studied your butt off. It was a mini bar exam. You know that you know how to do this. So for me, it's not taking on other people's doubt and skepticism.
True.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Jenny. Like I hadn't really thought about that because it's hard when, I've got clients, sending me screenshots. Oh, well, they keep on just calling you just a paralegal. You can give me real legal advice, right? Like this is real. And just, remaining confident, like, yes, I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm doing. Can be difficult for sure.
I agree with what they both said. Sometimes if someone is questioning on what I can and can't do, I go through our limitations again. I also share my bio and explain my experience and how long I've been working as a paralegal, and that if I have any questions or issues that come up, I have an entire firm of attorneys that I can go to and ask for help. And I definitely have some from our firm that are extremely helpful with any questions I have, even if it might not be the greatest question and it should be self-explanatory. I have the backing of attorneys to help walk me through it.
And then, so on that note, what type of professional development resources do you guys use, and that have really helped you to build yourself up in your role?
I mean, I've been, going, this was actually the first year in a while that I missed like the Family Law Institute, just doing those. I really like some of the, lunch with the bench sort of programs that different bar associations will put on to help get that. I mean, I try to take advantage of all of the different CLEs that are available for making sure that I'm staying on top of everything. I also, I have my, I keep my whole thing that I used to study for my LLP exam, like all of my, like I have like a list and got kind of my big bullet points, big takeaways for each statute, easy for me to just read, like literally right next to, like I keep next to me at all times. So I think those are just things, and just keep going because the law is ever changing, and reminding yourself is, or just keeping on track with what's current.
And so they specifically help you to then overcome some of the challenges that you meet.
Yeah, they just help remind like my confidence, right? Or like if I go in there, I'm like, oh, I knew that. Like this is something I've known or something I've seen. So yeah.
I think Alexis is right, though. Like we're in a field where if you don't grow, you're going to have issues. You're going to have problems if you're not continuously learning, whether you're an LLP, attorney, paralegal, because the law does change. And if you, I don't know, I also use the CLEs a lot. And pretty much any way I can learn, I will try, because I feel like it could just pass you by if you're not staying alert and aware.
And so I think, both of you have mentioned CLEs, but are there other types of educational type resources that you've used to help you along beyond continuing education?
Not that I can think of, nothing that's like specifically coming to mind. I mean, I try to I set up different things. Like I try to read a new case law once a week,
Yep.
you know what I mean? Just so that I can keep that fresh in my mind and start organizing my case law. I was, had all these high and mighty ideas. I was like, I'm going to read one every day. And then life happens. And so I was just like, I'm going to try reading one once a week. And then I organize it into my folders of like, this is a parenting time one. This is a mix of ones so I can have easy access to refer back to it. But I think that's more of like my personal ones. I also think like, as far as like communities go, like the LLP community has been great. Like on LinkedIn, like there's the one on LinkedIn, the messages. I know Veronica has put together, some like lunches and things to make sure we all stay connected and are make everyone feel like they have more people besides just the people in their firm. And I think that's a big thing, knowing that like we're not alone in this. In my class there were I think 62, people inaugurated, and since then there was 38, and then I don't know what this new class is. I haven't followed up with that yet, but we're getting bigger, and we're getting there's going to be a lot more around for us to really support each other.
Absolutely. If you guys could give one piece of advice to someone who is looking to become an LLP, what would it be?
I've been thinking about that. Yeah, like I said, since I read the rule to begin with, I just knew that's what I wanted to do. But if someone were thinking about doing this themselves, they're obviously going to be a paralegal currently. Just think about, can I do both jobs? Can I be a paralegal and represent this client? Because we don't have paralegals. So I love that. I think that's great. But if just realize that's going to be your responsibility. You're not just doing the paralegal work, you're doing both.
Honestly, I feel like experience is very, very important. I know we have a limit on how much hours that you have to spend directly with substantive family law. Me as a paralegal, I wouldn't have felt confident in doing this until I had been practicing or working as a paralegal in family law for many years. So I think the experience is, you need to be confident in yourself as a paralegal in order to move forward as an LLP.
Yeah, I would just say, especially as an LLP, is definitely like not for the faint of heart, right? You're learning new, you're becoming giving legal advice, having a limited license to practice law. Plus, you're kind of fighting the battle of like this kind of new thing, right? It's new. And so not only are you educating yourself as to like what the rules are and everything, you're having to educate everybody else on like the one rule that applies to you, and kind of fight two fronts, so to say. And I think that can be really hard. So just making sure that like you're mentally prepared for that, and like having a good support system. Like I couldn't imagine going through the test and everything if I didn't have the support system I did. So don't undervalue that. I also think make sure you pay attention to like what works for you versus what works for everybody else as far as studying and how you organize cases and all of that. Just make sure that you've got your own head with your own ideas ready to move forward.
How do you guys see the LLP role evolving in the next several years? Do you think it'll go into other areas of law, something bigger in family law?
I mean, other states have, right? I want to say, is it Utah has like the LTTs, the little LLTs that have like it for some civil, some like small claim civil stuff, some small criminal stuff, and family law. So they've got like the kind of different mini bar exams for each different type of field you want to practice. I think that could be interesting. I mean, I don't play in those other realms very often. So, maybe, criminal paralegals would have a better insight as to that. But I think, really fine tuning our rules and taking away some of that ambiguity, and I think expanding, some of the scope is probably in the future. I think they're already in talks about kind of how we can clarify this. Really, what makes something out of a LLP's authority, right? Why can't they do some of this stuff but other things, right? That some could argue are more complicated. So I think hopefully we'll see that evolve over time.
So yeah, better clarification on this scope. Any other thoughts or ideas of how it might evolve?
I'm kind of hoping that they eventually take a look at the limitation regarding the rules of evidence and not being able to examine a witness and address that. So even if it means we have to go through a lot of extra steps, trial school, whatever, any kind of training for it, I would love to see that change.
I agree. I think it would be super helpful if we were able to examine witness in the court. I feel like it makes it more complicated because you're prepping your client, you're sitting there with them, and they're coming back and you're either writing notes to them or whispering in their ear. It'd be nice to kind of take that step away.
Yeah. I also think, to add on to that, like looking, dependency and neglect cases are one of the most commonly types of cases in a juvenile action that have parents who certainly may be on that cusp of not qualifying for state appointed counsel, but like not having enough to be able to pay for a private attorney, that like maybe there's some like gap consulting even that could happen there, because those people really need access to justice with really long-term implications on their rights with their children and all of that as well. So I think that would be interesting to see occur.
A possible change.
Mm-hmm.
What else? I mean, just kind of as a wrap up, any other general thoughts or ideas on being an LLP and being a successful LLP?
I'm going to just say, I mean, I don't know, it's just kind of a comment, but I am really grateful for the judges involved in not only developing this program, but supporting it, promoting it. And they were on the front lines and they saw why there was a need for this. So it feels really good to be constantly supported by that community. I would also say that you just have to if this is what you want to do and this is what you're supposed to do, just work really hard and trust it.
Any other thoughts?
I mean, for future LLP, for people who are considering, I just remind yourself that like this is a limited law license, so the exam is hard, the work is hard. Like there's no part of this that's easy, right? Like I think there's some misconception that like, oh, this is just the easier route compared to being an attorney, and I disagree with that on a foundational level. It's just a different path. I wouldn't say it's harder or easier, it's just different. And so just if you're take it with that level of seriousness. I think I've talked to people who were considering it becoming LLPs, and they just had this misconception that it's just a little thing. I'm like, no, it's not. It's a big thing. You need to give it the weight that it is, because they're giving you a license to practice law. Yeah, yes, it's limited, but like that comes with heavy burden. So make sure that you're ready to carry that and take it that way. So I think one of them had told me, well, the pass rate was so good on the first one, it couldn't have been that hard. Like, no, that's not a very, like, you need to think about the type of people who sat for that first exam, right? Those, or any of these exams, not many people walk into this willy-nilly, but especially not for that first one when you had no study guides, no insight, no test, like nothing. And that pass rate was indicative of those professionals treating that test with the weight that it was deserved. So I think just making sure, like, we have to start giving it weight, and the people who are start wanting to come in giving our license weight for everybody else to start accepting that too.
And Tara, anything kind of final last comments from you?
No, I agree with everything that they said. Being an LLP is a whole different stress level, and it definitely is not easy. There's been sleepless nights. There's been nights I go get on my laptop to make sure I responded to someone or didn't miss a deadline. And it comes with a lot more responsibility and a lot more stress, because you don't have a client or an attorney to go to. to deal with the hard issues, deal with the upset clients, deal with the issues that come up with emergencies and cases. That all lands on you once you become an LLP.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions that are in the chat. So I want to thank Alexia, Jenny, and Tara for joining us this afternoon, or not even the afternoon, it's still the morning, but for joining us and discussing this. And I think we will persevere. And I think the whole LLP role is going to continue to move forward in a strong manner. So thank you for everybody attending. Thank you for our speakers. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you. You
Thanks.
too.
Bye.
Bye.